All right, everyone, welcome to the Citizens Archive of Pakistan's Book Club Across Borders, Session 2 between Bamyan and Muzaffarabad. It's so nice to see all of you, and I hope all of you are keeping well and safe. And the book that we're going to be discussing today is Khalid Husseini's The Sea Prayer. I hope you all enjoyed reading the book and going through the illustrations of the book. This book actually personally means a lot to all of us at the Citizens Archive of Pakistan because it talks about events and relationships, which we really want to discuss as part of our book clubs. It talks on the emotional quotient of our growth, and it talks about understanding and humanity as part of our basic DNA. So it is something that we are really, really excited to start our conversations on. Before I go any further, I'd like to ask my participants in Bamyan to tell me about what they thought about the book. So I will take two opinions from Bamyan, then I will move to Muzaffarabad, and I will take two opinions from Muzaffarabad. Then I will come back to my team in Lahore and get a few questions from them that are going to be targeted towards the participants in Muzaffarabad and Bamyan, and we'll take the conversation from there. So on that note, moving on to Bamyan and getting their opinions on what they thought about the book and the book that they would like to share with the rest of us. Bamyan, over to you.
In the name of Allah, my name is Abdul Wasid Safazada. I think the book was a very interesting book because it is written according to the situation of Afghanistan, because in 5 or more than 5 years, recent years, we had some people they have gone to foreign countries, Europe countries, and most of them they killed on the way, and they have been killed by seas, by waters, and also including the children, including the women, and also some people. They were old, and actually, it is look like it looked like a letter that a person write to his children, to his child or to his son, that he talk about past situation that was not good situation, and he says right now we have good situation, but in past we had no good situation. And actually, when I was studying this book, I was enjoying, and it was a very interesting book. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. My name is Umay, last name Amini. And my idea about this book, I love this book so much. The only reason is that this book shared not just his story, but a story of lots and gathering of a lot of people, not just from Afghanistan, from different countries and from different places. And the situation is going on, and the story is not just about Khalid Husseini. It's about different peoples, and we have experienced this in the past. Lots of Afghan people are experience this bad situation, and the only reason is that I love this book, and it's interesting. He's trying to share the situation of lots of people for the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction to the book and what you thought about the book, Bamyan. Let's move on to Muzaffarabad and get two opinions from them. Muzaffarabad, over to you.
Now you can talk.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing great. So this book is very interesting. I read it and it's a story about the Syrian kid. It's not only the story about the kid, it tells us about all of the people who live in Syria. As we all know, there is a lot of terrorism and they're suffering a lot because of terrorism, and they have not given their rights. So yeah, it tells a lot about them, and yeah, it tells this book is all about imaginations and all that, and this is very interesting because it is related to Islam. It's not only about Syria, and there are many people like Afghans, Iran, and it's all about that. So yeah, thank you.
Next.
Assalamu alaikum. This book is about the memory of a boy and his guardian tells you in your childhood you visited some farmhouses in Afghanistan and you don't remember that. And this book is about imagination and the destruction in the Afghanistan and many more things. They went out and they found there a mosque and a church and people are worshipping their God in their own way. And the destruction in the sounds of atom bombs and sound of bombs and many other things which are done in Afghanistan.
This book is very interesting.
This book is very interesting because this book is all about imagination and we can understand it easily because pictures are very clearly and concepts are very clear. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Muzaffarabad. And on that note, let's go to our friends in Lahore and ask them what they thought about the book and if they have any questions that they would like to bring into the conversation. Lahore, over to you.
Hello, assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about the book and on the subject of what is known as the refugee crisis. I think what's interesting about for me when I read the book was that the crisis part of this refugee issue isn't that people have to flee from a home. It is that no one is willing to accept them, and that is what brings that crisis. That is what brings the destruction and the destroyed experiences that refugees have to face in this day and age. And I think what I would want to ask you, and I would want you to think along the lines of and hear your opinions on is what you think home is. Is home a physical space? Is home a particular identity? Or is home any place that welcomes you? I would really like to know what you think on that matter. So anyone's open to take it on. Bamyan, if you want, you can take it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Aru. So basically, Aru's question is, what do we think about when we think of home? Is home a physical structure? Is it a city? Is it a country? Or is it an emotion or feeling that we have? So on that note, let's go to Bamyan and get their opinions on what they think home means. And then from there, we will move to Muzaffarabad and get their ideas on what home means to them. Bamyan, over to you. Bamyan, is anyone coming to answer this question or should we move to Muzaffarabad? I think Bamyan is having some technical issues and their frame has frozen up. So let's move to Muzaffarabad with the same question, get their opinions while the glitch in tech in Bamyan is sorted. Muzaffarabad?
Okay, ma'am. What home is for you? The country is a feeling.
Assalamu alaikum. Home is a emotion attached to our family. It's not like a just structure. When there is no one with you in the home, it's like a physical structure. But when you have a family in that home, it's a house of feeling emotions with your family, with your mother, father, your sisters, and any other. And also this book is between the emotions of the father and his son, to tell him a story of blasting of refugees. And country is also our home, where we can live with our people's families and friends. This is much more from my point of view for home.
Thank you so much for that, Muzaffarabad. We have Bamyan back. Bamyan, the question that we are discussing is, what is home? Is home a physical space, or is it an emotional feeling that we have? And that is a question that we would like somebody from your end to answer. So anyone who'd like to take this question on?
Sorry, Ms. Ali, due to a poor internet connection, we didn't get the question. Could you please repeat it?
Yeah, sure. So this book, The Sea Prayer, basically talks about a conversation between a father and a son who are refugees. And it talks about the feeling of home. So throughout this book, we get that the home is a space of security and safety. And that is the question that we want to ask. When we think about home, is home a physical space, or is it an emotional space that we have? Hello, Bamyan, are you with us?
Okay, thank you so much. Now our internet connection is very poor. So can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, our participant will discuss this. Thank you.
Bamyan, could you maybe switch on your video, or is the internet not supporting the video?
Hello again. As I
Because of poor internet connection, we turn it off so we can hear you clearly.
Okay, lovely, no problems.
We will turn it on when our internet is stable. Thank you.
Okay. As I have studied the book, it is in this book a home, and also the tree and also gods were mentioned. I think they are not real. They are not real. That the person has written this book, he had same situation, but he has written this book according to the situation of Afghanistan, a situation that countries they were not in good situation. He has written this book, and I think it's not real that this person or Khalid had this situation. It is a sense. It is written based on sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Bamyan. Okay, so basically, what you're saying is that you think that this book is a work of fiction and not facts. I agree with you. But what Khalid Husseini through this book is trying to do is he's trying to humanize the process of migration in the world. Because of the war crisis and the state of uncertainty and instability in a lot of countries, people have to forcefully leave their homes to find shelter and safety, because it is impossible to live in their own spaces. And it talks about the arduous journey that they overtake to find safety. And a lot of times they cannot even find that safe place that they're looking for, and the journey itself takes their lives. And it talks about the trauma of war and the trauma of migrations and refugees, to give people who are not in that space or who are not living through this trauma to understand, to empathize with the dilemma and the trauma of the people who are experiencing it as they move on every day. Now, that is a thought that for both Muzaffarabad and Bamyan is something that is very close to home. Both of us are living in circumstances which have forced upon us migrations, which have forced upon us away from the identities that we call our own. And how does that feel? So like when you were reading this book, you would like to share those. So let's go to Muzaffarabad first, and then we'll come to Bamyan.
In war, we don't only get hurt physically, but we get hurt mentally too. Like, cause we lost our loved ones sometimes, and that actually hurts us a lot, and like it gives us a mental shock too. So when if like if we only get like we are refugees, and even if we are refugees and we live in a different country, we have attachment with the people too. Even if we go through a war and our loved ones or our country people get hurt, we get hurt too. Like it's not only if we will get hurt, so that is called war. If our loved ones, yeah, if our loved ones will get hurt, so we will get hurt mentally. Even if we don't get hurt physically, but we will have a mental shock. We will be disturbed through that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that thought. I completely agree, because hurt is not just physical. A lot of times extensions, relationships, emotional attachments that we have to the people around us and them getting hurt impacts the way we perceive ourselves. So some of us might have been able to find shelter, but to find out that a lot of us were not able to find that shelter and lost their lives, or came across some other traumatic experience, is just as troublesome for us as if it had happened to us ourselves. So that is something that, yes, is very strongly indicated in the book, The Sea Prayer. I'd like to go to Lahore and ask my colleagues in Lahore to shed some more light into some of the more subversive aspects of the book that are kind of put out there for the audience to understand and for the audience to mull over in their minds with as you read the book. Because of course it is a story of a boy and his father who are on a voyage by sea to find safe homeland. It is a conversation, it is the relationship that comes out strongly, that regardless of whoever you are, wherever you come from, as a parent, your most important responsibility that you feel that you have is to make sure that your child is safe. So you're willing to give up your life to ensure that your child has a better future. And these are some very dark emotions to struggle with, because sometimes we cannot even comprehend what it would feel like to be in that situation. But that is a situation that the writer constantly pushes us to question. And I'd like to ask my colleagues in Lahore to shed some more light into some other really subconscious angles that the writer constantly is trying to address. And how does that feed into the conversation that we're having today? Lahore?
Hi everyone. So when I read this book, I found this book very sensitive and heartbreaking as well. I would like to come back to the incident which actually inspired Khalid Husseini to write this book. The incident of Alan Kurdi, the child who was washed up on the shores of Turkey when they were trying to flee Syria. So what I would like to ask you guys, when we all heard about this incident on the news and the way the refugee issue or the refugee crisis is portrayed in the news, how does it make you feel? Do you guys think the way it is portrayed in our media, it actually gives out the real message, or the way it is I'm basically what I feel is they dehumanize the whole situation. We just know that this many number of people they died, and this many people of number this number of people they had to move out from their homes and find another homeland. What do you guys think about that? When you heard about this news, when you got to know about the incident of Alan Kurdi, how did it make you feel? Bamyan, if you could please answer that question. Yeah, I think we have lost Muzaffarabad.
Hi, Bamyan, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you, but we didn't get the question. Sorry for the inconveniences.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to rephrase the question that Lahore asked. And the question was, okay, when we see the representation of the refugee crisis in the media, why that be television, newspapers, or social media, how does it make us feel? Does it make us feel more connected to the stories, or does it desensitize us? That is the question.
You can go ahead.
Okay, as you can hear me, as you say, the news we are hearing on TV, newspaper, social media, everywhere about refugees. When we are watching them and we are listening to them, we feel the same as the book, because in the book, Khalid Husseini mentions all the situation of being a refuge, and going to other countries. It is very mentioned there, and what we are going to feel there when we are a refugee. And being a refugee is all mentioned how it feels, and it connect us with that. When we are listening to news and magazine and everything is there, and when we are reading the book, both of them the same. We are feeling the same and more connected ourselves to them, to refugee people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that thought. And yes, it is. I have a thought that I want to put out there, and I want all of us to mull over it and see how we think about it and talk a little more on it. Is that when we hear about the refugee crisis in other countries, and we hear about the refugees and them looking for shelter, like for example, when the war in Syria erupted and it was winters and refugees were flooding into Europe, a lot of European countries refused to take them in. Like they just refused. They said, we don't want these people, and these people had nowhere to go. A lot of people were lost on the ship, were lost on the way coming into these places, and a lot of them, even though they found a safe shelter, they were not allowed entry into those spaces. So the concept of the others that we have, like the kind of people we are willing to take in. So for example, as a Muslim country, we are very empathetic to the plight of the Muslims across the world. We are very willing to take in Muslims who are suffering. And in that also we categorize what kind of Muslims we're willing to take. Either we have sectarial divides. We figure out these kind of Muslims. First we ourselves, streamline what a Muslim might or might not be. And after that, we get into the sectarial divides, and then we decide what kind of Muslims are going to be allowed shelter in our country and which of them won't be allowed shelter. After making that category, we also look at the color of their skin and decide whether that color is acceptable to us or not. And we don't think of them as human beings. And this is just for Muslims coming into Muslim countries as refugees. And then you have the whole non-Muslim community who wants to find safe shelter. The question that I have is, are we as open to accepting refugees as we claim to be, even though both of us, Pakistan and Afghanistan, have their own people who are constantly looking for shelter? In Pakistan, when the insurgency in Swat was happening, the people of Swat were displaced and they traveled all over Pakistan. But I've heard from a lot of sources that their acceptance wasn't very high. They weren't integrated into societies. They were left on the outsides. It wasn't a choice that they took. It wasn't their choice to move out. It was the force of the circumstances that take the option for a better life. Not even for a better life, actually, just for safety. They would have died if they had remained there. Same is with Kashmir. A lot of Kashmiri people had to displace themselves because they did not have a choice. A lot of Afghan people had to displace themselves because they did not have a choice. It was that or death. So they decided to choose life over death. But how, even though we have lived through these experiences and have understood the dilemma and the trauma of being a displaced person, how have we treated it? How do we feel about it? And how open are we to accepting different people coming into our societies, bringing in their different cultures, their traditions, and integrating it into ours? So that is the question that I have for Afghanistan. How open are you to other people coming in and finding shelter with you? Are you open to others?
Okay, the question was, I completely got it. How much we are open if refugees from Pakistan came in Afghanistan? And it's in our culture that we are mostly hospitable, and as we are Muslims and our religion order us to do this, of course we will be open, and as much as things we can do, as much as help we can do, we will help. And I'm so happy that about Pakistan. Also, Pakistan is doing the same. I've read in a Roman, there was, when in Afghanistan, there was fight. About 3 million people of Afghan people were refugees to Pakistan, to Pakistan. And Pakistan gladly accept them and give them life, home. And now most of Afghan people, about the number is not so clear. They are living there, and if we have the same choice also to accept refugees in Afghanistan, of course we'll do that. Thank you.
So my question is, would you only be willing to accept Pakistani people? What if they were Indian people, Hindu people who wanted to find shelter, safe shelter? Would we be still that open? Do you think?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. There's no bias or no discrimination. People all over the world will be happy to accept them. And as an example, we have one Indian man in our society. His name is Father Linto Anto SG, and we are so happy with him. He's living in here. It is maybe about 12 or 10 years that he is living in Afghanistan, and we have very good time. He helped us. We helped him. It's a good fact.
That is so heartwarming to hear, and I'm so glad that we are such open and accepting people. Talking more about the acceptance of refugees and coming back to the story of the Sea Prayer, and I constantly am talking about Europe, is because the Sea Prayer is actually based on the plight of the Syrian refugees. And it is also talking about the travel route that you take through the sea to find safe shelter. And I remember 2 years back when all of the international media was filled with stories of refugees coming onto the shores of Italy, onto the shores of Turkey and lots of other countries in Europe, and most of them were completely refusing to take them in. And the Pope spoke about the refugees and why they should be accepted. And he was, as the head of the Catholic Church, his voice held a lot of resonance. And most of these countries were, some way or the other connected to the Vatican. But still, there were very few number of refugees that they were willing to take in, because they believed that these refugees would come into their societies and change the basic structure of their first world societies and actually be a menace. That's what they thought. They thought that by getting these people in, they would change, it would change the basic structure of their societies, and the societies were doing so well. And if they took all these people in, then they would have to feed them, clothe them, provide them shelter. And why should they do it? Because, I mean, their savings and their tax money, why should it go into feeding these people, right? Because it wasn't their problem. It wasn't their issue. Their country was fine. So, I mean, these people, they had no connection with them. So how does one develop empathy for people that you might not know anything about, but people who are suffering? I mean, that is one of the biggest questions that the Sea Prayer asks. How do you develop empathy? And how do you humanize a lot of people who have been dehumanized? For example, people from Pakistan and Afghanistan world over are known as like people who just blow themselves up. They're all fundamentalists. They are all, they have no respect for life. And that is the perception that is by and large there. So when you, as a Pakistani or as an Afghan, try and find safe shelter or a better life for yourself in another country, one of the problems that you will experience is some sort of discrimination because of who you are. How do you address this? How do you make sure that the world that you leave behind is better than the one that you were born into? What are the steps that one can take? Bamyan, anyone?
Sorry, Bisali, can you just summarize the question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what are the steps that we as people who are suffering, are the refugees and not the shelter givers. What are the steps that we can take to ensure that our people are able to find shelter? Anyone?
Okay, go ahead. Or Vasil, or
Yes, as you said, European countries are refusing refugees from different countries. For example, one of countries can be Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, and those countries. And they said that if we have the choice and we become a first world country, that we have the capacity of accepting refugees in our country, the first thing that we would do is considering humanity. After that, putting ourselves in the state of them, putting ourselves in their state they are living, and to feel how they are feeling. I think if we put ourselves in the state of them and feel how they are feeling, nobody will refuse them. And as it was in the book mentioned, the mother said, if they see us so clear, and if they see our situation, how it is going on, they will kindly ask us to come. Thank you.
That is beautifully put, and I am so happy to hear that. I completely agree. It is, we are in a very turbulent time for sure, but we're also in a time which can teach us a lot, how to be better human beings. It can teach us how to be more sympathetic, how to be more empathetic and to humanize us more than others, because the suffering that we have around us, the suffering that we experience every day, is not just put there for us to live through, but it is an experience to enhance our skills as human beings so we can teach our children to do better. And what has happened to us, what we have experienced, it just becomes a footnote in a story and does not become a reality. On that note, let's go to our friends in Lahore and ask them if they would like to shed some light on this particular topic.
Hi, Ali. There was a bit of an internet connection. I didn't get your last sentence there. But I just wanted to talk about your point, the point you made earlier about empathy and how we can develop empathy for people who are seemingly other than you. And I was just thinking about that. Interestingly, I think, interestingly because this is a book club, I think that literature and sharing your own experiences or even fictionalize, somebody from Bamyan earlier mentioned that this is a fictional piece. You're absolutely correct. But I love how a fictional piece can develop such an engaging discussion, right? About facts, about figures, about territories and demarcations and all of those very, very stoic things. And how does that happen? It happens because an idea is told to you in an emotive way. You feel something after reading it or hearing it, and then after that you react. And interestingly, this piece of literature reminded me of another piece, writing that I read as a child when I was in maybe grade 4 or 5, and it's in Urdu. It's called Murda Badaste Zinda. It's a short story by a Pakistani writer called Bukhari. And that story is beautiful because it encapsulates the idea of empathy in a really, really in-your-face sort of way. And so basically what happens in that story is there is a man and a wife, they're living in their house, and every evening, just when they're about to, have their tea, sit in front of the heater, somebody knocks on their window every evening. And it's basically this guy in the neighborhood whom they call a madman, and he knocks on the day and says that, do you guys have some like overcoat that I could, some piece of clothing, winter clothing that I could wear, because he's cold. But since he's a madman, they're like, he's at our door every single day. And because he's there every single day, it's happening so much, they're desensitized to that fact, and they're like, we're not going to help him. And then one day, there's a knock on the window at exactly that time, and it's actually the other people of the neighborhood instead of that man. And they're saying, oh, this man has died, and we're collecting donations to hold a funeral for him, so can you donate anything? And they immediately donate money. And then they're sitting, in the end of the story, they're sitting there looking at each other, and the story ends. And I think what it speaks to, especially with the refugee crisis and with the way people who come from displaced backgrounds are perceived, it is that, oh, this is always happening there, wherever there is. If they're talking about Pakistan, if they're talking about Afghanistan, or currently talking about Syria, they're always like, media or that international attention, or anywhere where you aren't displaced, you're always thinking, oh, this stuff always happens there, what's new about it? So you're desensitized to it. And I think the way to develop empathy every single time is to call that desensitization out, to remember that you were desensitized to something else earlier on just because that was the other. And if it happened to you, what it would make you feel like. So I think the best way to develop empathy is to remember how you can absolutely be in that very same situation at any given point in time, to understand that there is no such thing as in divine given, I don't know, ordained stability. And I think that is how you will always remember that every single human being is worth being saved, because if you consider yourself worth being saved, then why won't you consider anybody else? So yeah.
On that note, it just came to my mind, especially the COVID-19 pandemic. It has taught us that we have each other, and we have to be empathetic towards each other, and we have to help each other out. If any one of you is in some situation where they need help, we have to go out of our way to help them out. And I think that's what this whole time has taught us.
So yeah, a lot of thoughts from Lahore. I love that our friends from Muzaffarabad are back. And so what we were discussing earlier on, guys, is empathy and how you can relate to people who may not be from the same geographical locality as you, who may not be from the same religion as you, and if they're in a point of crisis, how do you relate to them? So I would like to ask you this question. What do you guys think about that? How can you relate to someone who is different to you? Over to you, Muzaffarabad.
Ma'am, kindly repeat this question.
Sure. What she is asking is something very simple. She's asking, how do you relate to people who are different from you, but are struggling and need your help?
Okay, ma'am. जल्दी से आ जाए जो स्ट्रगल कर रहे होते हैं उनको कैसे आप हेल्प आउट करेंगे उससे आ जाए आप में से कोई आएंगे come here.
So not all of us are the same. There are a lot of people who are different. So it is all about how do we understand their mental condition. Like we should have compromise. Like if they're of like if someone is misbehaving with you, we should not have misbehaving with them too. We should have tackled them like we should talk to them kindly so that they might understand their mistakes and they can be like they can feel sorry and they can act kind to us too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. On that note, I'd like to share a little something that really resonates with me when I think about how we're all different, yet we're all similar, and kind of gets my human quotient high. Is this letter that is hung in the United Nations General Council. When Kofi Annan was the president of the United Nations, he had found this letter that was written by Hazrat Ali to his then chief of his armed forces, Malik al-Ashtar. And in that letter, he had sent Malik al-Ashtar as the governor of Egypt. And in Egypt, there were people who belonged to Islam and there were people who were from different religions. And Malik al-Ashtar was known to be a very strong, disciplined man. And because he was the chief of the army, he was also known to be extremely strict. So in the letter, Hazrat Ali wrote that, remember, when you are governing them, they are your brothers in humanity or they are your brothers in religion. And that is one of the most powerful letters ever written by a leader to his governor, who he is sending to a place where they know that opposition is thriving. Like, so Egypt, if you look at that time when Malik al-Ashtar was sent to Egypt, is the time when they weren't very popular. So they knew that Malik al-Ashtar would not be a popular man, and he would face a lot of opposition, and that opposition could maybe make him be harsh towards the people. And that was something that should not happen under his rule. So he wrote this letter, and this letter is something that is a testament to all of us, to who we are. We are either brothers in humanity or we are brothers in religion. And that is one thing that we must never forget. So when we read a book like The Sea Prayer by Khalid Husseini, which talks about the plight of the refugees, we must always remember that it wasn't a choice, it was a circumstance. And just because people did not have a choice, we should be the ones to make sure that they don't feel that way. We should embrace them with open arms, because even though they did not have a choice, we can give them choices because we were fortunate enough to have choices to begin with. So that's something that we all must always consciously try and train ourselves to do. That we must always remember that a lot of us have choices and a lot of us have choices taken away from us. And on that note, I'd like to go to my friends in Bamyan and ask them, how do they feel about circumstances in which there are no choices open to them? And how do they think they can brace themselves to make sure that the environment is able to give them choices as they move forward?
Miss Alia, we are extremely sorry. Again, there is some technical issue and we didn't get the question.
No problem. I'm just asking that a lot of us find ourselves in circumstances where we don't have many choices. So what are the things that we can do as people without choices to make our lives better? What are the things that we as seekers of refugees, a seeker of refuge can do? And what are the things that you think we do wrong? Because I have a list of those as well.
Sorry, I'm just کسایی هستن که مثلا خب چیان همین رفیوجی چی کار میکنن ما کدام کارهای اشتباه رو انجام میدیم نابایسته که نام چیز بسن so our participants are thinking now. Can we just move to Muzaffarabad? They will share their idea and then we will get back to you.
Sure. So Muzaffarabad, the question is, what are the things that we do that are not very positive as seekers of refuge, and what are the steps that we can take to overcome those problems?
हम refugees के साथ कैसा behave करते हैं और इसको overcome करने के लिए कौन से steps ले सकते हैं? तो आप बोले ना कि हम हमेशा उन्हें refugees कह के बुलाते हैं बहुत सारी चीज़ों में seats में ये वो तो then कौन से steps लेने चाहिए? Equal rights जो है वो हज़रत उमर के दौर की वो चीज़ है.
Assalamu alaikum. Here we are, if there are refugees from Kashmir, our government can set a place for refugees to then give them a better place to live, to eat, and our government set a seats, educational seats for refugees to take them, bring them in front of us as well. And as you know, in the time of Hazrat, he also said that refugees are your brothers. You can give your places to him, your places to him, your meals to him, your houses to him, place them to him, your houses. So as we are Muslim, we can do everything according to our Prophet, peace be upon him. So we respect refugees and give many opportunities to give and seeds in educational processes to bring them in front of us as well with us. We don't feel them that they are refugees, they are migrated from other countries. We can talk well with them, and they never felt that they are refugees from any other country. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that information, Muzaffarabad. I'm just going to move over to Bamyan, but I will come back to you. And when I do, I want you to be prepared. I want you to read a passage from the book that you feel strongly talks about what is the message of the writer. So like a small passage that you pick that you want to share with all of us. We'll go to Bamyan first and get their opinion on the refugee crisis, and then ask them to share, to read out an excerpt from the book as well. So Bamyan, over to you for the question, and then moving to Muzaffarabad.
You can go.
Summary जो last पे लिखी हुई ना वो पढ़ें और उसके बाद वो शेयर करें. चलिए एक मिनट में उसको म्यूट करो.
Yes, the question was, we don't have choices and how we can continue living. Am I right? Yes, the answer could be different answers we could have, but my idea in this case, I want to share, when we are refugees to other countries and we have no choice, for having a better life, we need to forget what we were in the past. Everything we had, we need to forget them And the only thing we can to have a better life, the only thing we can have is thinking to co-op with those people, to their culture, respect them, that we can receive respect, and this could be the best solution in my case. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I love the fact that you say that we must respect the new culture that we become a part of, and try and become one with that new culture. But I also believe that we should not completely forget who we are. We should remember who we are, but not force that onto the new culture. So if their practices, their traditions, their cultures are different from ours, because we are in minority, we should learn its relevance. We should take part in their celebrations, in their joys, in their sorrows, as our religion teaches us, as our tradition teaches us, as our history teaches us, and then try and educate them about who we are, where we come from, what our history is, so that we can all evolve together and create a better world. There is no harm in that. I mean, just because of circumstances, we were forced to leave a place which had space for us. But that doesn't mean that the whole world is not a space that has been occupied by human beings, all from different walks of life, from different geographical boundaries. Why are we restricting our existence to geography or to boundaries or borders? We are much more than that. I mean, that's the way I feel.
Ms. Ania, there is another opinion from the Bamyan. We have a participant who actually was a refugee back then, and he wants to share his experience with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that would be lovely.
Hello, my name is Adolf. My last name is Anwari, and I was a refugee in Pakistan. And also my uncles, they are refugees in America. And as I see so many persons, they always told me that if you respect a person, if you respect a thing or a culture, then they will respect you. And also that when we, the rule that they have, how can I say that we should follow that rule, then we will have a good communication with them. Like I was in Pakistan, they said that we have to clean the road when we see something in the road like plastics and other things. And if we clean the road, then we follow their rules. And also they will think that they can be part of us. They will they will see that they are my families. They are my families in my country. And if we do these things, will be, how can I say, an open person in our country to have a good reflection of friendship with that guy, with that country. And also, that's so important for a person or for a culture to follow the rule. Every time when you are in a culture or when you are in something or some places, when you go there, you see a person is dancing. If you dance like that, then you say that you are like me. You could be one of us. This is so important in everywhere to how can I say, to accept one refugee in your country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that thought. And I completely agree with you that one must learn to coexist. And your story has so many lessons to teach everyone. And I wish that more and more people get to hear your story and be inspired by it and learn to understand that life does not always remain the same and it keeps on changing. And everything in life is a way for us to learn and grow and become better. We must not let our shortcomings stop us for living our lives and having our dreams, because if we don't have our dreams, we have nothing. And unfortunately, we're running time. And on that note, I'd like to take one opinion from both Afghanistan and Pakistan on just some last closing thoughts on the book and the message that it conveys. So talking about the refugee crisis and what it means to the world, taking an opinion from Afghanistan, and then moving to Muzaffarabad. Over to you. All right, while Afghanistan is getting their thoughts together, let's move on to Muzaffarabad and get their closing thoughts. Muzaffarabad?
This book is written by Khalid Husseini. He dedicated this book to thousands of refugees. I read in this book about a child who was 3 years old and he migrated from Syria to Europe. That's all.
Any message kya de rahe ho? What is message in this book? What do you think? Ajo, come here.
In this book, the message is that we should understand the feelings of refugees too. Like they suffer a lot, like they lost their home, their family, and if you will not give them their rights, so that is so wrong. Because if being a Muslim, it's our duty to understand all of them, as our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has told us that we should understand all of us. Like we should be kind to the mankind, and we should give them all the rights. And like we should understand their feelings, because even if they don't show us about like their hurt, but we should understand, like, what if we lose our family, like what if we lose our home? Obviously they will get hurt, so same like they get hurt too. So we should give them their rights, we should respect them, we should not call them refugees, we should call them our brothers or sisters. This is all the writer wants to teach us.
Thank you so much for those lovely words. Such heartfelt words and so heartwarming to hear them. On that note, let's move on to Bamyan and get a closing message for them. Bamyan?
Does anyone? Should I open on that one?
In the name of Allah. Hello to everyone, my name is Alia Saifia, and today I'm very happy that Bamyan LLC gave us this opportunity to communicate with you and to show our abilities. And this picture was very good for us, because but that life, that time seems like a dream now, even to me. For example, the meaning was, or the idea that in the past, their life was very comfortable and they had a happy life. But now it looks like a dream. And it is very hard to live in this situation. And also everyone hopes, and these books give the idea for us that peace was a dream from the past up to now. And now I want to say that I hope and we all hope that today or after that we can bring peace and country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And on that note, we are out of time. As always, it was a pleasure connecting with you. I look forward to many more conversations where we get to discuss more books and ideas and opinions. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, be kind, be generous, and always be open and tolerant of others. That is the one message that I cannot reiterate enough. I truly believe that only by being tolerant will we be able to create societies which improve as we go with time. So you all take care of yourselves, and hope to see you soon. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Thank you.
You can say bye. Allah Hafiz.